Hey guys, this is a stop capture, a time lapse. This is a time lapse video of me editing episode 25 of the podcast. I think it's called Dissecting Gender with My Ex. At the time this video goes up, it won't be up yet, so maybe SJ will change the name. I thought I'd do a little video because it was, something I'm doing anyway, to show how I edit it. So if you look at the top right, you'll see that I started exactly 7 p.m. and so you will get to see how long it takes me to do a video. That little game you just saw is a game called Hex Cells by Everett Kaiser. He is an amazing game designer. He designs logic games, which, as you can imagine, I quite like, and you'll see a lot more of that game throughout this video. The first 20 minutes of me editing, I realized I was actually editing the previous week's podcast, which I'd already edited. So you'd think, Peter, wouldn't you recognize that? It turns out, no. These podcasts sort of tend to blend together a little bit, which is dumb. I use a system called Pomodoro. Down the bottom right, you can see my Pomodoro timer, where I do 25 minutes of work, then have 5 minutes off. I ate right before I started editing this video, so this is just, there's no lunch breaks, there's nothing. This is just like the pure editing process in all its pureness, in all its purity. So what I'm doing for most of this video is, first thing I do is I always import the audio. Very important. If you don't import the audio, it makes editing the whole thing much trickier. This commentary is being recorded in one take so that it matches up with the time thing, so I'm not going to be able to go back in and edit myself like I normally can. So I'm just trying to say everything right the first time. So after importing the audio, I use a thing called strip silence, which you'll notice that all of these little clips are little like bursts of chat, and then there's a gap before the next burst of chat. Logic actually does that for you using strip silence. I use the settings 2.1.1 and 1. So if you ever want to use strip silence, that's what I recommend. 2.1.1 and 1. And that gets me our conversation. It gets me a little gap on either side of the conversation, and it means that it doesn't cut in between individual words, just in between like fragments of speaking. This logic game, I really enjoyed watching the time lapse of me playing this logic game, so I've done a bunch more of these. You can find like a heap more footage of me playing that exact logic game because I think it comes together quite nicely. This video, by the way, is every second is one frame. So every second in real time is a single frame of this, which translates to roughly 50 minutes being... Nope, that's all right. I can't remember the math, but it's some really solid math, I'll tell you that. I think it's every 50... No, genuinely cannot remember. But yeah, every second it took a screenshot, and that is now one frame of the video. So if you're good at maths, you'll be able to work out how that works, or if you just pull out a stopwatch or hold your pulse. So once I've imported the audio and stripped the silence and synced it all up, I sync it up before I strip the silence, also important. Mostly what I do is I cut gaps, so you'll see just like everything getting closer and closer. Real conversation tends to have a bunch of silences, and I'm always worried that I go too far on this. I don't know whether I do or not, but that's always my fear. Oh, I'm gone. I'm back. So at this point, I made a little cup of coffee and then forgot about it for about 2 hours. So keep an eye out for 2 hours time when I drink my cold coffee. Because I was recording my whole screen, normally I would have, Facebook and whatever else I'm killing time with on my breaks in another tab. In this time I didn't, so it's only this program and my game. All of my off time was spent on my phone, which is arguably how it should be. Yeah, otherwise I would be opening emails from clients and stuff like that, and you could screenshot it and be like, aha, Peter wrote porn for this person, and don't do that. So yeah, most of what I do here, as you can see, is just removing silences. I get rid of ums and ahs. If you keep an eye, you'll notice I often cut out the other person's interjections or conversation. That is because generally, in my experience, I don't like it when you hear one person saying la 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 and the other one being yep, yep, yep. So I cut out the yeps. The way SJ and I tend to chat to each other, and I know this annoys people, is that we sort of just start talking when we feel like it's our turn, and the other person will either stop and let you take over the conversation, or they won't stop, and so you'll try to say a thing 3 or 4 times, basically get cut on. This is me working on my my non-podcast project, Scuttle. That was something that I urgently had to do, so that was a bit of me resizing a card and then sending it off to the appropriate person. Yeah, when SJ and I are talking, if the other person wants to talk, they will generally just start talking. And this happens both ways. You can see it's gone into night now, or about 9 p.m., so I've been editing for 2 hours. My room was dark until I turned the light on. So we will start talking, and the other person will either, stop and let you say your thing, in which case I'll go in and remove the bit where they were interrupted, or they won't stop, in which case I'll just remove the interruption, because I don't think it's fun or enjoyable to listen to someone being like, I should, hey, but I think, yeah, but I really, yeah, but I want, uh, it's something that doesn't bother either of us. Like, that's just how we talk. It happens in real life as well. On the podcast, it's not a bother. Sometimes one person will start to interrupt, the other person will finish their thought and then stop, and the other person's halfway through their thought already. So when that happens, there's a little bit of overlap. I'll just separate it. So instead of hearing the end of one thought and the start of the next thought at both at the same time, I will move it so that you hear the end of one thought and then maybe a little tiny gap and then the start of the next thought. Uh, until I started recording this, I've never thought about that as a method of conversation. Around this point, as you can see, I'm doing pretty well in my game there. Most of the screen is purple now. That game, you can download a demo of it for PC or Mac. I really like it. I play a lot of Logic games, but in the last maybe 2 months, that has been the one that I've almost exclusively played. I've played like hours and hours of it. It's really fun. So at this point, I started having this really fucking annoying Logic bug, where Logic will be like, no, you don't get to listen to anything anymore. SJ's experienced this, I've experienced this, I've done a bunch of reading online, and basically it just comes down to the fact that our files are too long. There's no solution. There's like 3 different things you can do to try to fix it. Which one of those 3 will work is random draw. So in this one, I'm trying the first one, which is just freezing clips and then playing, and then letting it freeze while I play my game, and then going back, and it's either frozen the clip, or it's totally bugged out, in which case I need to restart it. So at some point in here, I actually restarted my computer. I stopped the recording, started again. So yeah, it's just a bunch of me freezing, and then I have a bunch of time to kill while it tries to freeze, so I play my game, and then I go back, and I'm like, oh, it hasn't frozen. Eventually what I did was, if you look at the file name, you'll see it's changed to 25.2. That is because I just cut the second half, made a new file, and started editing in there, which I don't like to do because it means I can't keep track of the length of the project and stuff like that. But sometimes you gotta do what you gotta do, and that annoying Logic bug left me with no choice. Someday I reckon we'll put an unedited episode up, and you will see. I bitch about this all the time on the podcast and to SJ. I love SJ. She's amazing. She will start a thought. There's one point in this video, in this podcast, where she started a thought 7 consecutive times. Over the course of about 90 seconds to 2 minutes, she was like, well, so my take, what I reckon, okay, so here's my thought. And then she finally, like, that was the very condensed version. I'm sitting there editing it, and just like, I will, if someone gets halfway through a sentence, stops, and then starts the sentence again, I'll just use the second one where they start the sentence again. Sometimes people will stammer over a word, and it bugs me to listen to. So I will go in and I will try to edit sometimes mid-word or mid-sentence. I will like really intricately trim it because I want this to be the most pleasurable listening experience it can be. And so I will do some really, really precise editing. Sometimes it comes across as a little bit artificial, which worries me. But sometimes I'll be listening back and I'll be like, oh God, that cut, Peter, that was awful. That sounds so artificial. I'll go in to tweak it. Turns out that wasn't a cut. Sometimes SJ and I will just end halfway through a word and then start a new word in a way that sounds like it's been really poorly edited. That's just how we talk. So I try to make it sound as natural as possible, even when it's unnatural. Where'd he go? Where's Peter? He's back. What is it? It's just about to hit 1 a.m. So this is me. Is that right? 1 a.m.? No, it's 11 p.m. This is at 11 p.m. At this point, I was texting with a girl, and so I stopped really doing the Pomodoro system. I would stop having a break, and I would text halfway through my 25 minutes of work because I'm a rebel like that. And it was a really cute girl, and we're having a very fun time texting. Oh, looks like the project's finished. So once I've done my first edit, and I mean like a full edit of the entire, generally I'll cut an hour and 10 minutes of audio down to about 50 minutes. I can't remember what length this ended at. Once I've done that, and that will take, as you can see here, maybe 6 hours, I will then go back to the start and just listen. And because I need to do something while I'm listening, I can't just sit there and stare into space. I'll play this logic game as I listen. It's really good because it doesn't take up any of the creative side of my brain. So while I'm listening, I'll play this logic game, and then if I hear anything jarring, I'll go in and try to unjar it. Really, like, if this was the thing I was getting paid a lot of money for, I would go in after that and listen to the whole thing a whole second time, because sometimes when I fix something jarring, I make it sound as good as I can, but it ends up somehow more jarring, but I'm more familiar with it. So when I listen back to the podcast, because SJ then uploads it about a week and a bit later, when she uploads it, I will sometimes listen to it. Most of the time I don't, but sometimes I want to hear what her little message at the start or the end was. And so I'll go back and listen to it. I'll be like, Peter, that edit. No, what were you thinking? So really, like, if I had infinite time, I would edit the whole thing, then listen to it twice. As it is, I do not have that much time. Like, this takes a full day of my life, as you can see. Normally I start about maybe 1 p.m. and I'm done by about 9ish. And this one I started at 7 p.m. and I think I finished about 1 a.m. So that's 6 hours. Yeah, so that's actually not too bad. 6 hours is pretty good. Normally it takes somewhere between 5 and 8 hours, depending on how much I need to cut out, how long it was, and how many fucking audio bugs Logic throws my way. Oh, finished it. Finished the whole puzzle. Finished the Logic game. Man, that game's good. Hexels by Everett Kaiser. I recommend playing the A game while you listen to podcasts. It's a really lovely way to spend a day. I had a day off the other day. I'm really bad at having a day off, so I just played Hexels all day, recorded it, so that's why you'll find more videos of it, and watched Community, and that was a fun day. Community, I'm getting more into it. That's totally irrelevant, which is the main thing I want to talk about here was the editing process. So yeah, Logic is not a cheap program. I don't think you can actually buy it anymore. I have an old copy. But it is so good for doing this, except for its random bugs. A lot of people I know edit in Audacity. I don't know how you would do that, because the way that I like to shift stuff is if you hold down Shift and press F, it selects the current clip you've got selected and every clip after that, so I can just move the whole timeline past a certain point back and forth as I adjust things. I don't know how to do that in Audacity. I don't know if you can do that in Audacity. It would drive me bananas. Whereas Logic does some really good stuff. Yeah, I think that's most everything I've got to say. Yeah, so I will not often cut out content. Sometimes if we start a thought and we kind of go on for a bit and it doesn't lead anywhere and it's not referenced to later on, I'll cut it. Like, there was one episode where we were talking about Genius, and we probably spent close to 3 or 4 minutes just discussing comedians, and it didn't really like thematically add to the podcast. It wasn't that interesting. Like, and I was one of the people in the conversation. I wasn't that interested. So I ended up cutting that, and that's the kind of thing that I cut when I listen through the second time. So the first time I edit, I don't really do much in terms of content cutting, unless in the podcast we say, cut that bit should go. Oh, this is me recording the intro and outro for this podcast. So that's Audacity. That's what I use to actually record, and then I use Logic Pro to edit. Audacity is really good for a lot of things. It's really reliable. Like, it's a solid little program. It's open source, so that makes it very reliable. And then this is me putting that audio in and trimming it together. I actually re-recorded this a few days later, so if you're crazy enough to compare the wave signs or something like that, you'll notice that they don't match up. That's because I forgot to, even though I found my microphone and plugged it in, I forgot to actually record from that. I was recording from the iMac's inbuilt microphone. Let me know if this is interesting. I genuinely don't know if people will find this interesting or not. I enjoy doing this kind of weird behind the scenes stuff because that's what I enjoy watching. Thanks for listening. Bye.